We're just okay. Thanks, Leisure, for starting the recording. Just give me a moment. I'll just bring up the presentation and then we can get started. Just a quick check. Is the screen visible? Vinayak, Leisure, could you guys confirm? Is the screen visible?
Yes, Pavan.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Morning, everyone. Again, thank you so much, Leisure, for organizing this, and thanks, Vinayak, for that quick introduction about sales and profit. And just to continue what Leisure was referring to is about webinar Wednesdays, and the objective here is to cover multiple pieces of sales over a period of time. And what we have done earlier in the series is one first session was about ICP, which is Ideal Customer Profile. In the second session, we covered about the sales strategy in terms of recruiting right resources for your team. And the third piece is what we are talking about today, and this is predominantly about sales productivity. Sales productivity is largely a very vast topic and it runs into multiple dimensions. So what we're going to be covering today is just one perspective as sales leaders and as a sales executives, what is that they can contribute to their team and what are the parameters they should be evaluating to ensure that the teams are more productive and entirely they are able to deliver more results. If we go back to the history, productivity typically started with something related to agriculture and industrial conversations. That was the origin of the term. If you look at a little more, I think it came into the personal being with one of US president starting to jotting down their own daily activities, and that's where productivity started getting into the human side of it as a terminology. Then, and I'm trying to skip a lot of steps in between because the term started somewhere in about 1800 century and it's been in use from then on. But if you bring it to today's date, productivity is one of the most important thing for a sales leader because sales strategies and sales productivity go hand in hand. If you do not have a productivity aligned with the sales strategy, the entire strategy is going to fall flat. And that's where it's very important for leaders to look at what a productivity of a team is and what exactly is that the team is going to spend time on. I'll quickly take you through a very simple study which was done by McKinsey, and to give you an idea what typically happens today. An average sales guy spends about 2,000 hours in a year. And if you just look at the entire chart, you're looking at only 40% of the time being given on the sales task, which is a role specific task in this scenario. Rest of the time goes on a lot of other activities, and out of which emails take the longest time, about 28% going by this. What this leads you to believe, ideally, if you look at it, if I have to give you a single line summary of what's happening over here, is that organizations start looking at activity rather than productivity. Everyone is busy, but no one is being productive. So if I have to define sales productivity, what it is not, I would love to put it this way, that activity is not productivity. And we need to get this mindset out before we get into a conversation of what a sales productivity is eventually going to look like. I'll take you through a small example of what does typically productivity is measured or how it is looked at. Let's look at the facts over here. There are two reps, Rishi and Riti, and they have the same number of hours in a year, and they have the same number of leads assigned, and they're making about different calls. I would want you to take a moment and just tell us your view. According to you, who is more productive in this scenario? Leisure, can we have the poll coming up so that we can hear the responses from people?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. For the benefit of people, I would go back so that you can read in case people want to read the data. Lijo, please close the poll in next 15 seconds. Can we have few more responses, please? It would help us to get a better cross-section of the view people have. Okay, let's close the poll, Lijo, please. Can we see the results? Okay, fantastic. Most people believe Rishi is more productive. Now, can we, Lijo, we're done with this. Thank you so much for your responses, guys. I'm going to add up another piece of information for you to look at our entire answers you gave, and then tell me. Now we have average yield of Rishi and Riti added up to the information. How would you rate them now? Who is more productive in this scenario? Lijo, can we have the second poll coming up, please?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. 1.1 is what we are referring to.
You still can participate.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll close the poll.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Lijo. Let's close and bring up the results, please.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for sharing your views. And I think that brings to the point what I was trying to make. Let's look at the actual, typically, productivity is a unidimensional measurement in most of the scenarios in the organization. As most of you rated that, Rishi is more productive over here. But if you look at, I'll bring up the entire dynamics to you in front of your screen right now. If you look at, both of them are equally productive. The moment you look at the calls made and you look at the average yield of a call, what we're trying to say is that both of them are equally productive. Both of them are generating $40,000 revenue for an organization. So if you go by a simple logic of revenue per rep, both are equally productive. But typically when we start evaluating our teams on how much productivity each of the rep has, we typically get driven by the amount of effort in terms of calls made, or the pipe they have generated, or the amount of activity in any form and shape they're trying to do, right? And this is typically a misleading way of measuring productivity in any organization. What we'll take is, we'll take a moment to look at how does it really look. Let's look at what are the challenges, what is that this slide eventually tells us. First important point, that the number of calls made are different by both the reps. One of the key reasons why they would be making different number of calls is probably one is taking more number of hours to document details in a CRM or the different tools. Or it could be any part of the process which one is not efficient at doing, but the other one is quite efficient, and that's why Riti is able to make more number of calls. Probably Riti has taken some third-party tools into consideration, because of which she is able to make more calls. It could be an integration with any third-party app, because of which she is more efficient in the number of calls she is going to make. Third observation you might want to look at is probably Rishi is more skilled, because he is able to generate more revenue from the same call, while Riti is able to generate lesser revenue. The other observation could be that, are they addressing the same market segment? Probably Rishi and Riti are going after an entirely different market segment in the overall process. Now, if you look at it from a leader's perspective, probably these four are the core areas which, if you could address, both of them would be able to deliver the same number of calls. And when you look at it, your ideal number is going to become about $80,000 per rep. And that makes a very large impact on the overall business. So what we're trying to get at is that as a leader, if you address these four key concerns over here, one is your process, one is your tools, skills and segment. And we're going to just rephrase them as we get into a conversation. But then the problem statement for a sales leader ideally would rotate about these four topics largely when you try and address a productivity for an organization. So what exactly is a sales productivity going to look like? It is a sum of efficiency and effectiveness. If I have to put it very, very simply, if I can prioritize the most important task and do it in the shortest time, I'm going to be the most productive person. If you look at any of the books you would have read on self-productivity, this is what they preach. Going back to Stephen Covey, that's what you do, urgent and important quadrant, right? The analogy applies that I want to do something which is most important, and you would want to cut down from which is urgent and important. At the same time, you want to reduce that cross-section largely. So what the productivity formula still remains same, whether it's a team, whether it's an organization, or whether it's an individual. You want to do the most important task first and do it in the shortest span of time. And that's what a productivity is all about. How would you typically apply this to a team? And when it gets on to a team, what typically happens? We start creating a evaluation of who is better, which is better. Is it effective or is it efficient? And I think one of the myths which we need to get away from as an organization is that it is not a choice between effective and efficient for a productivity. It is a sum of both of them. We need to ensure that the team is efficient and effective both. Efficient in terms of able to do a task faster, and effective in terms of being able to prioritize, which is an important task. And as we get into the conversation, we're going to take a couple of examples and understand what does this typically mean. The other thing which is important is the moment we say efficient in today's day, the first thing which comes to your mind is automation. Sales automation has been a buzzword for about a couple of years now, and it has only gained traction as we got into the COVID period, and after that, we are exiting out of it. It only took a lot of center stage that while people are remote, they're not able to access, and what more can they do to be more productive while they're working remotely, right? And efficiency has typically been taken as sales automation largely. Now, what a sales automation is all about? If I have to simply define a sales automation is the ability of your team to do an unwanted task or a repetitive task in the lesser amount of time and be able to do more productive work or focus more on the customer conversation. It is basically a customer FaceTime enhancer. Now, what are the pointers as a leader you would have in your day-to-day conversation to say that you should automate a certain part of a sales process? And this is where a leader plays a very important role, that what should be automated and what should not be automated. A sales team would always have a different view of it, but since a strategy is designed by a sales leader, you're also equally responsible to enable your team in terms of being able to deliver on that strategy. And one of the key factors could be that how can they have more customer face time? So if you look at some of the answers which you have, deals for falling through the cracks. A deal was a customer today says that, okay, reach out to me after 3 months. But who remembers that after 3 months is the customer being contacted or not? One very important use case of automation. If you have a tool as an organization which tells you after 3 months that you need to call this customer now, probably a deal on the table. Makes your rep more productive because they're still trying to search new deals all the time, while there are enough deals lying at the back end, which has been forgotten. You look at most of the time, what do sales reps do? They do go about looking at deals in alphabetical order. or in the value order. But is that a right priority to look at? What if a tool could tell you that these leads have more information attached and they have more probability of closing because of the data attached to them? Probably your team will be more effective in terms of addressing those transactions, and it becomes a priority for them. So automation is, again, in very short, looking at it, that automation is about enabling your team in multiple steps of a sales transaction to be able to reduce the amount of time they're spending on a repetitive task. And that's what an automation is all about. And there are enough examples on the screen in terms of most of the time customers ask the information and your sales rep is going to go digging in it. There are enough tools available to tell you while you're on a customer call that this is a case study which you can talk about. And that's the automation what as a sales leader we all should be looking at largely. Let's take a quick view from all of you all over again, that when you look at an automation as an impact on your sales team, what is that you expect? What is the automation impact going to be on the productivity of your sales team? And this is more about setting an expectation of what kind of automation should you be looking at and what is the outcome of it. Lijo, can we have the poll coming up for this question, please?
Yeah, sure.
We'll take about a minute and wait for your responses. Lijo, can we close the poll and have the result, please?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for responding. And I think this is exactly where the poll was designed. A study says that the outcome expectation what organizations have is way off, because we want an automation to give you a lot of result in a shortest span of time, and that's why you're related to efficiency. The fact lies the answer to this question was about 12%. Most of the organization reaped only 12% benefit of automation. Now that would tell you that why effectiveness becomes really important in the equation when we said efficiency plus effectiveness is equal to sales productivity. Because presumed assumption is that efficiency is going to drive a larger part of productivity while it only contributes to just 12%. 12% in some scenario might not be a small number, but still to ensure that we are in the right direction of what should we choose between what should we automate and what we should not is what we're going to look at now. What should automation ideally do? And how do you make that choice of whether an automation is really required for a process? There are some key factors. Does it improve accuracy of your sales team? Does it help your organization increase a customer satisfaction? Does it streamline the quality of your task? Does it keep the data consistent? And these are just largely about 8 factors which have been brought up from multiple research factors, but these are not something which is, I would say these are guiding lines for you. As a sales leader, if you can fulfill about 3 or 4 of them by one automation, then it's a good process to automate, or it's a good step to automate for your team. It's going to give you results. Ideally, you should be looking at what is that one piece which I'm trying to get out of an automation. And since there is so much expectation from automation, that brings me to the last point and the piece of this conversation from an automation perspective. That 2 important things when you automate any step of your sales process, which you need to be cognizant about, is that it's the direction and the dark side of automation, which is over automation. So if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, I might have the biggest automation available, but if it is in the wrong direction, it can backfire. A simple example of this would be that I have automated almost every step of my sales process, but they are in different tools. And each tool does not talk to each other. Now, my sales rep typically is going to have about 5 tools to log in at given point of time, and they will keep flipping between multiple tools to enter data or to find data. You have automated the entire sales process for a reason. It's entirely wrong direction because the tools are not talking to each other. And that's going to kill more time rather than give you any productivity to your team. The second could be the other side, which is typically cautioned about. Are you over automating yourself? Look at the right side of your screen. There's an important part in every sales process, which is a human factor, which is the personalization piece. Sometimes we go beyond and kind of kill that in the automation scenario. A simpler, rather much more simple example would be the day your organization starts spamming customer accounts with mails and you start seeing number of blocking going up. Probably you have crossed that line of email automation in your organization. A very simple tool which every organization uses today. Reaching out to customer using an email. But it's very important to know at what intensity, what frequency do we need to plan a campaign so that customers do not start blocking us off. Because sending an email using a tool is one of the easiest thing available. And that's what we need to be careful about when we look at as an automation from a leader's perspective. So just to look at from an efficiency perspective, which is typically looked at automation, what we're trying to say is we need to be cautious about in our day-to-day transactions or in day-to-day sales interaction. We need to pick up the pointers of our sales team, what process or a step should be automated. One, which brings the largest value. Second, we need to measure it against the outcome. And third, we need to be cautious that are we over-automating or we are going in a wrong direction. And that's pretty much is about as a leader what you can do about bringing up the efficiency of it. Let's quickly take a simple graph of what should you automate and what you should not, and what should be removed from your entire sales process. If you look at the right bottom corner, that's what we have been talking about. Something high on effectiveness but very low on efficiency is what you need to automate. If something is very high, if you need to do something repeatedly and do it faster, but the effectiveness is low, it's probably something which is going to kill your team slowly. And that's the example we said of multiple tools. You're going to improve the efficiency of your team in your mind by bringing multiple tools, but you're going to bring down their effectiveness largely. And that's going to be a slow killer which is the left top corner of the graph. Any tool which gives you both together, which is the top right corner, is what you should multiply. And that's the ideal thing what you would be looking at. This is just a nutshell of if you have to make a judgment as a leader. I think it's a very simple guideline of efficiency versus effectiveness of a tool and what to automate and what not to automate. Let's move towards effectiveness. And effectiveness again is measured in 2 parameters. It's not a single dimensional measurement. It's about impact and urgency. Am I able to create more impact by the sales step, what I'm going to do next on the customer side? Or is it just that I'm reacting every time to an urgent situation, what a customer asks? It's like customer is asking me proposal and I'm just going to give it to him in a hurry. And that is not going to create any impact. A very simple way of looking at it. And most of the time, sales reps end up doing this. So if you could address the urgency piece of your sales rep, it is going to really help them do much more. And then comes your impact. Let me give a simple example on this entire thing. Most of us love the Indian curry, right? The grinder was invented because there's a lot of women who was taking a lot of time grinding with hand, and it was a very time consuming process. But at the same time, it is very important to look at the gravy, what you're going to make out of it has a very important factor. If you make it Too fine, it becomes a little difficult, and the taste goes away. So you need to have that right combination, and that's why there are multiple ways or the jars what you use over there. So you got to fix the right jar to get the right output over there, and this is exactly about impact and urgency. You need to be very, very clear that your team is going to be highly effective on the evaluation and the automation when that becomes balanced. Let's look at simple metrics from a people perspective. How does it come out to be? How would you rate your team on the productivity metrics? You're going to have a top performer on the type right corner, which is ideally and highly effective and a highly efficient guy. But that's only the about 8 to 10%, or in the best case, about 20% of your team. Rest of the 80% of your team is going to sit in the remaining three quadrants. The poor prioritizer is very high on efficiency. These are the people who would be very fast at sending out emails to the customer, very good with the tools what you have provided them. They're very good with internal processes. And then comes the highly effective people, which is about 80-hour work. This guy is about largely perfectionist. He's going to look at doing everything right. He's going to do everything right in the priority order. But then that brings down the efficiency largely, which means both of them are going to yield far lesser in a productivity scenario than any other guy in the system, right? And this is just a basic guideline. I think we're going to revisit this more from a personality perspective in a short while. Let's look at how do you increase the effectiveness of the entire team as a leader. There are three prime factors. If you look at the first thing, the problems we called out, one was a skill, which is largely about enablement. Addressing the right market segment, which is about customer segmentation. And we spoke about a process, which is largely about organizational design. And what we just covered till now is basically the tool piece, which is the efficiency part of it. So as a leader, these are another three factors which are going to increase the sales effectiveness. And what we have assessed till now is that efficiency is about 12% and effectiveness is about rest of it. So let's spend a little more time on what are the key factors which an effectiveness can bring about. Let's look at enablement first. Where does an enablement start? It starts with the onboarding of a rep in the organization. What should an enablement do next? It has to be a very skill enhancement. It's a focused skill enhancement program. An enablement helps your team to know what should they do next when a customer says, yes, I would want to talk to you. I feel we have a synergy and we should have next conversation. But what should that conversation look like? What should be the content of that conversation? What should be the ideal frame of that conversation? Is your team good with that? Because that's an opportunity which you cannot miss. It's something which is there on the table for you to close. And then comes the last piece in enablement, which most of us look at. And the previous slide, which we looked at, is the top performance. Top performers are not the entire story. Your enablement programs cannot be designed keeping the outliers in the mind. So an enablement as a tool has to address four things largely. And these are the four things what we're looking at. Let's quickly bring up the same chart which we had about the top performer, the 80% 80-hour worker, and someone who is good at efficiency. If you look at your sales team, these are the four kind of people you would typically find. The bottommost, the left bottom corner, is a gentleman who is doing wrong thing the wrong way. And these are typically what we said are the people who are poor performers. Your entire enablement is ideally supposed to be focused on the top left and the bottom right corner. These are the people who are going to grow up to your top right corner, which is quadrant 2 and 3 going into quadrant 4. And these are the people, one who is high on efficiency because they're doing the wrong thing, but they're doing it the right way. And that's what we said. They're very good with sending out emails quickly. They're good with Excel. They might be good with processes. They might be great with tools, but they end up prioritizing the wrong thing. And that's what we're talking about, doing the wrong thing the right way. These people and the bottom right corner, which is about hardworking people, the 80-hour worker, is someone who is doing the right thing but not able to get an efficiency on it. If your enablement can bring these two guys up towards the quadrant 4, that's when your productivity is going to go up. And that's what we said. It has to be a focused skill program or a focused coaching program for each of them because they belong to a different quadrant. You can't have one line of thought process to all of these guys. And enablement over here is largely about sales coaching. Until unless we coach these guys differently as a leader, these people are not going to come back into quadrant 4. There's a logical movement of all of them towards moving a quadrant 4. And a coaching is about that specific one-to-one focus conversation. And that's where the fourth quadrant also does not tell you the entire story. Let me take you through a small information about what should an effective enablement do. An effective enablement should address both a process and a skill. Process from a perspective of how do you prioritize and one in terms of how do you manage your opportunities. Do you have a set process of qualifying an opportunity which everyone is following? Is it that you have account management already in a structure of what should every rep go and do in an account management format? These are the process piece of which most of the organizations today leave it to an individual to define by themselves because we feel they have a very, they're empowered or they're delegated, and we are saying that let them handle it in their own personal style. But then that leaves organizations to a lot of space. When these people leave, they take away all the information with themselves. And that's why it is important to ensure that enablement covers the process piece of it. Everyone should bring in the information, put it in the tools, and ensure that it is covered and everyone follows the same standard. The skill piece of it, which we said, does your team know what to do next? Are they asking the right question? Are they listening enough from the customer? Are they able to get over established credibility? Are they able to get commitment from a customer? These are important points which every team should know, or this is what we mean by does your team know what to do next in a transaction? And these two things put together, when you look at it, make the entire team highly effective on one thing. And we're talking only about one factor, which is coaching. If you coach them on process and skill, the productivity of the team goes up largely. And that leaves me with one point on the screen, which we had is about onboarding. Let's look at why is it important to ensure that when a new rep comes on board, they're quickly brought up to speed, and that can largely be done only by enablement. Enablement and coaching is one factor which can reduce the time taken by a rep to be productive. And just to hear from all of you, we would want to see what do you feel that what is average time taken by a rep to be productive? Lijo, can we have a poll on this, please? Yeah, thank you.
So we'll close the poll.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much for your responses. Again, I think the average, as per a study by Accenture, the average time taken by a rep to be productive in an organization is about 10 months, which is almost close to a year. So every time an organization has a new rep onboarded, it's about 1 year before they become productive to contribute to company goals, which is very long time. An enablement and a coaching largely can bring this time down to a substantial amount. So if we want teams to be more effective, enablement is one thing which we can look at again. And just to give you another study which was done and which talks about if you increase the productivity of your mid-layer team, which is the second and third quadrant which we looked at, if we increase their productivity by 5%, organization results see effect up to 20 to 25%. So quadrant 2 and quadrant 3, which we looked at, which is someone who is very efficient but doing wrong prioritization, and someone who is very effective but doing not able to deliver efficiently. These are the two people. If we can improve their productivity, the results improve by 20 to 25%. Let's look at the second parameter from perspective of a sales leader. It's about customer segmentation. What does this ideally mean? If we go back to Rishi and Ritti, we said, are they addressing a same market segment? It's very important as a leader that we set up what is our sweet spot in the market and what is that we want to address. What geography, what kind of customer, what industry, what vertical, how many employees will they have? Everything has to be given very, very clearly to your team. And from there comes the second point of what is the value proposition you bring. Once you have reached a customer connect, what is that you should be talking? Who is the right customer contact point for your team? Let's take a simple example. There's an organization which is about recruitment. It does sales recruitment largely. This organization very clearly has defined one simple thing. We will go after companies which have only about 10, minimum 10 sales reps or above. The employee size could be anywhere from 300 to 3,000. They will operate only in a technology space. We will not go to the companies which operate in a manufacturing space or anything. We will only be focused on a tech companies. So, and once we reach, we are going to be reaching out to the L&D lead, the sales leads, or the HR. Now look at it, when a sales rep in this organization has to do their job, they very precisely know with each filter that one, I would want to search a company which has minimum 300 to 3,000 employees or 4,000 employees. They should have minimum 10 sales reps. Otherwise, we are not going to talk to them. They should be a technology company. If we have to reach out in this company, we're going to reach out to a L&D lead, we're going to reach out to HR, or we're going to lead out to the sales lead of the organization. Now, when you look at a sales rep's daily work, what they're going to do, they don't have to struggle going and finding out new customers from a random pool. Apply a simple, this entire thing to a navigator, and your team has a very refined list of what and what, when, whom should they connect to. And this is what a segmentation brings about in effectiveness. It reduces the cross section for your sales team on which they have to focus. And that brings about a lot of customer face time, because they don't have to keep scraping the entire database for finding the right customer. Then comes the last piece. Is your sales and marketing team, which typically is told to be work in tandem, are they using the same messaging? Let's go back to the example we said. The marketing team here is very clear that they will only be addressing a certain market, and the value proposition they have is very simple over here. And they're going to continue giving the same messaging as a sales team over here. And that makes it very easy for a sales team to pick up a conversation when it comes from a marketing team. Because marketing team is going to reach out to the same base of customer, 300 to 3,000 tech companies, minimum amount of sales reps, and whom are we going to talk to? And that's what in segmentation brings about to your team largely as an effectiveness. It increases your customer face time largely. It increases the quality of conversation, brings about a value proposition largely clear to your customer in the first conversation. And that makes a lot of difference when you look at a larger market statement. Let's look at the last piece of an organizational design. As a leader, I think most of sales leaders have this control on how do they design their sales team. But what happens after you've designed your sales team largely? So one of the important piece which is missed is, does your sales team know what your organization knows? This is about the case study which we were referring to a while back in the automation space. Most of the time, sales rep goes back searching for information from multiple stakeholders in the system. And why does it factor in our productivity? Let me give you another research and quote you another research. One of the research which was done, which says that if you go out to someone in your product team who is deeply engaged in his work and you take away 5 minutes from him, he's unproductive for next 1 hour. So every time your sales rep goes finding information. One, he is killing the entire organization productivity. One, he is killing his own time, which is second cost to the organization. And look at that, not necessary that the information is going to come in the first time, because if someone is in the middle of something, you again keep going back. So it's very important as an organization design and a process to ensure that your sales team has a repository of all the information handy with them in terms of what are they going to talk to customers. And that becomes a very important factor when you design an entire sales process or when you design sales team. Let me put a simple example. There's a concept called designing, a sales team, designing it like a box or a box model of it. What you do, you put a pre-sales, you put a sales, you put a delivery guy over here, and you put one of the product guy as a batch. Now, once you have a product, a sales, a pre-sales, and a delivery together in a single bunch, I think most of the information is covered. Your sales team is not going to go and search for information most of the time. And that saves a lot of time for the customer, and it makes the conversations with your clients more effective. And that's one of the important factors when you look at organization design and process. Look at the other thing which we spoke about. You can have multiple systems, multiple processes, but if they're disjointed, it leads to a lot of manual work. It leads to a lot of lost time and a lot of lost opportunities. One of the example we took was the leads which are warm or which are pretty delayed, say about 3 months, 6 months. If this system is not accessible to your sales rep, it is lying with marketing, then it's a disjointed information, which is going to lead a loss of opportunity after 6 months eventually. Let's take a very routine example again on this. Where does your sales rep lose his time? Most of the CRMs do not talk to your billing systems. They will tell you information that this is the amount which has to be billed, but it does not carry a copy of an invoice largely. It does not know when was the last invoice sent. Now, when a sales rep has to follow up for a simple payment process, he has to go and struggle with 3 systems. This is a very simple example of disjointed system in an organization. And lost time is equal to lost opportunity. Let's not forget that. Every time your sales rep is losing time, he is losing opportunities in the market. One of the other piece which leaders need to look at is cadence. A cadence is an opportunity to coach your team in the correct direction. We spoke the importance of sales coaching. Your team members needs to be brought in from quadrant 2 to 3 to 4. Cadence should be used largely towards coaching your team, towards moving towards quadrant 4. But when we look at it, by process, cadence is typically used just to understand where are you, how many calls have you made, what is your number, and what is your next comment. It ends there. I think cadence is one tool which should be very, very effectively used to bring up a coaching into the team culture. And let's not forget, sales reps are good at selling. They were never meant for being good at VLOOKUP. They were never meant good for managing your multiple Excel files. And that's where a lot of time is lost. And again, I will go back to saying that efficiency plus effectiveness. It's really, really important. It's not one of them which plays in. So as a leader, if I have to tell you that what are the 5 things what you should be focusing on, towards improving the team productivity, we'll start with sales coaching. You cannot undermine the importance of effectiveness in a coaching scenario, because this is one focused conversation which is going to tell you what is it that you need to do as an individual to grow up to quadrant 4, which is being a top performer. Second one is advancing prospects faster with values. This goes back to what we said. Does your reps know what to do next? Reevaluate the sales process. We just went through it in terms of sales process. Why is it important as a leader for you to look at sales processes? Automation, 12%, but can bring up a lot of efficiency in your team. And the last one is analytics, which is still catching up in the sales scenario. But if we have these 5 things aligned as a sales leader, the entire productivity of your team can go up it can be multiplied in multiple folds if I have to answer that question. And with that, I think I would say that these are the 5 things as a sales leader what you should do. But your 4 primary things, what you would be looking at is an automation, a coaching, a segmentation, and the sales design and process. Those were the 4 problems we started with, and these are the 5 answers to that. With that, I'll take a pause and kind of end the session over here. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope that you found it useful.